Hi, welcome to the channel Uniquely Female Troubles. My name is Leslie Wells, and the video today is called Why Didn't You Call Your Mother? And it's linked back to the last video I released, which was about being born with a cribriform hymen, which prevents intercourse until you have surgery, and then developing vaginismus. And I was talking to my mom about this, and she does know what happened to me. I mean, she didn't learn about it by watching the video. She already knew about it. But when it was happening, she had no idea it was happening because I didn't tell her. I didn't tell anybody. And I was thinking about it. It's almost like when I made that video, I was talking about somebody that lived on the moon that didn't have anybody to talk to or any wise woman, older woman to go to for help, or anybody to go to for help, not even my best friend. I mean, she could have helped me. My friends could have helped me. So, and I have a theory. That's what it is, a theory. Although my therapist agrees that that's very possibly what happened. And I want to talk about that today. I want to talk about how if a person, like in my case, if a child is traumatized, and in my case, it was that the male relatives was R-wording me starting when I was 5. And I want to explain why I feel like that caused me not to tell my mom or anyone about what I was going through. And so I was a pretty timid kid. But then this male relative, who was a big part of my life, not my dad, of course, but a big part of my life, he started R-wording me in my mouth when I was 5. And I repressed it. I repressed it completely. And I don't know if you guys know about this, but if you repress something, you are not capable of remembering it. It's not just that you don't want to remember it. And it's not something you can do voluntarily. It's something your mind does to protect you. So I think that one of the reasons I repressed this horrible experience is because this guy was a big part of my childhood. And I don't think I knew that there was ever a way that he would not be part of my childhood. I just thought that he would always be part of my childhood. So I think my mind, to protect me and to protect me during all the times that I would be around him, the only way to do that was to repress this memory. Now, if you just make up your mind not to think about something, that's different. It's called suppressing the memory. It's two different things. A suppressed memory might be something that you never think about because you made a conscious decision not to think about it. But if you choose to think about it, you can. When you repress a memory, I mean, somebody could have put a gun to my head and say, if you don't tell me right now what this person did to you starting when you were 5, or I'll shoot you, they would have just had to shoot me because I had no way of recalling that memory. Just like if somebody put a gun to my head right now and said, if you don't start talking to me in Chinese, I'm going to shoot you. Well, they would just have to start shoot me because I cannot speak Chinese. And that's the way it is. And then what happens is, generally, once your mind senses that you're safe, finally, once your mind realizes you're not in danger anymore and you're safe, and for me, that happened after I started therapy. I did not feel safe at all before I started therapy. And I really wasn't totally safe until I got out of the marriage and out of the cult. But my safety began to increase once I started therapy. And about 3 years after I started therapy, this memory came back. And I know it's true for a lot of reasons. One is I have 1,000,001 hang-ups about my mouth. If I see a person putting whatever they call mouth protector inside their mouth, like before a football game or a boxing match, I feel like I want to puke. If I see anything weird about the mouth, and I'm like, I didn't learn how to swallow pills until I was in my 60s, believe it or not. And grinding up pills and swallowing them, and everything from applesauce to crunching them up with cookies to everything you can think of, and trying to get every medicine in a liquid form is horrible. it tastes terrible. And yeah, and I had to do that all the way until my 60s. And I do take a lot of meds. And that was a big pain in the neck. And I am so glad that I can finally swallow pills. So when I was 5, I started kindergarten about 2 weeks before my 5th birthday. And I was already going to the dentist every 6 months. My mom and I went to the same dentist, and we would go together, and he would check her teeth, and he would check my teeth, and it was no big deal. It was fine. It wasn't scary at all. Then I started school, and my next appointment after I started school, I freaked out, and I covered up my mouth with both hands, and I started kicking, and the dentist sent me to a pediatric dentist. He couldn't work on me because I wouldn't cooperate with him. And so I know that between my last visit before I started school and my next visit after I started school, he started doing what he was doing to me in my mouth. And so that gives me a time frame, which if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't have a time frame. I would just know it started happening when I was really young. But anyway, that gives me a time frame, and I know it was around when I turned 5. So, and when I see a 5-year-old now, it's mind-boggling that anybody could do something like that to a child that young. Any child, young, old, anybody, adult, anybody. It's hard to believe anyone is that evil. So anyway, nobody knew why I freaked out at the dentist. The dentist had a theory. His theory was that I started school and I heard other kids talking about dentists being scary, and that's why I was suddenly scared of it. That is not what happened, but it's a good theory. And nobody asked me why I was scared, which if they had, I could not have told them because I'd repressed that memory. And like I said, repressed memories are not something that you can recall. And I did recall this memory when I was about 38. I started therapy when I was 35, and about 3 years later, yeah. So I was a timid kid. I was scared of a lot of things. But once he started doing what he was doing to me, I started being scared of a lot of stuff. And, I had a normal childhood. I mean, I was able to go outside and play with my friends, have fun, do fun things with my family, including this man. And I didn't get scared when he came over. I mean, it's hard to believe the mind can actually do that, but it did. And it is something that they know can happen. So it's not like a unique thing. So I got to the point that I was scared a lot. And I didn't know what I was scared of. I mean, sometimes I did. I started becoming scared of all kinds of things. But mostly it was just this horrible fear that lived inside me and that tortured me. Like when I tried to go to sleep at night, it would torture me. Like if my parents went to bed, which means turning off all the lights, turning off the TV set, going in their room, closing the door, and I was still awake, then I would have a horrible, horrible night. Now, if I fell asleep while mom and dad were still in the living room and the lights were on and the TV was on, then I slept all night and had a great night. But it was like, can I go to sleep fast enough? I mean, it takes time. So anyway, I started going to my parents and saying, I'm scared. And sometimes I couldn't tell them what I was afraid of. Other times I did tell them what I was afraid of because it localized to a lot of different things. And I'm going to read a poem in a different video about being afraid. How when you're terrorized, you can start becoming afraid of everything. And that's definitely what happened to me when I was an adult too. So I started telling my parents, I'm scared. And their answer was always the same. There's nothing to be afraid of. And they felt like that fixed the problem. Well, it didn't. And I've talked to my mom since then. And by the way, my mom told me I could make this video, that it was okay with her. I mean, I'm not getting permission from her to make these videos, but if one particularly concerns her, then I will ask her first, because I don't want to, do anything that would hurt my mom. She's a great mom. My dad was a great dad. He died last year. And so I started telling my parents, I'm scared. I'm scared. I'm scared. I'm scared of this. I'm scared of that. And they always said the same thing. There's nothing to be afraid of. And my mom felt like that the only reason that would not make my fear go away is if, one, I thought they were lying to me. So either my parents are liars, or two, I thought that even though I'm 10 and they're in their, 30s, they're adults, I'm a child, that I know more than they do. So either I thought they were lying to me, or I thought I knew more than they did. And I didn't think either one of those things. But just telling me there's nothing to be afraid of did nothing for my fear. And which makes so much sense, because if you have this big ball of fear inside of you that feels like it's consuming you, and you can feel it in every fiber of your body, and then someone says, there's nothing to be afraid of, that's an intellectual statement, and it does absolutely nothing to take away this huge, visceral feeling of fear. And that happened over and over and over again. So it got to the point where I felt like, for some reason, my mom and dad don't know how scary this world is. And so gradually, after being told over and over and over and over again, there's nothing to be afraid of, and not really getting any help with the fear, like I had no way of explaining to them how scared I was. Like I guess they thought it was just like a fear in my head, like, oh, that dog might bite me or something like that. But it wasn't a fear in my head. It was a visceral, all-consuming fear that was deep down inside of me. So gradually I stopped going to them about things I was afraid of or things that were bothering me. And just to give you some examples of things I didn't tell my parents about when I was a kid, one of them was I got made fun of at school because of my lunches. Because, believe it or not, when I was 10 years old, I loved sardines. So my mom would pack me sardines for lunch, which I liked. I enjoyed eating them. But I got made fun of because I had a stinky lunch. I never told my mom about that. Another thing I got made fun of is that if we didn't have any of those little small brown bags, my mom would just put it in a great big brown paper bag and then just roll it up. I got made fun of for that because I had this giant lunch. And I never told my mom. I never told anybody. It's just like, okay, it's something that happens. It's part of my life. Another thing I remember being really scared about is I heard on the news that the government was going to shut down because it didn't have any more money. And that scared me. And I remember laying in bed thinking like, wow, I hope our house doesn't catch on fire. Because I knew the government, that the fire department and firemen were part of the government. And I used to think, I hope nobody breaks into our house. There won't be any cops to call. Because I knew police were part of the government. And if I would have just asked my mom and dad about that, they could have explained to me, no, has nothing to do with that. But I was like 10, 11. So I was coming to all these incorrect assumptions. Like coming to the assumption that if kids make fun of me because I have sardines for lunch, there's nothing that can be done about that because I'm always going to have sardines for lunch. So whatever. Or if coming to the incorrect conclusion that the police and the fire department won't be there to protect us because of the government running out of money, that was an incorrect conclusion to that news. But that's what I believed, and I never told my parents. But I used to worry about it a lot. And what's funny is I probably would have been really happy if they would have closed the schools down. And I knew that was part of the government, but it never crossed my mind like, well, if the government doesn't have any money and they can't do anything anymore, then how come we still have to go to school? Why does the school bus still come and get us? But I never even thought of that, which shows how illogical I was thinking. So I feel like by having this horrible experience starting when I was 5, it divided me and my mom and dad. Because my mom and dad, they took really good care of us. They made sure we had everything we needed, and they never, you know, and a lot more than just what we needed. We were very lucky. And, but they had no idea what was happening with me. And that wasn't their fault. They didn't see it happen, and I never told them it happened. And obviously the predator never told them what he was doing. So the fact is they had no way of knowing what was going on with me. They knew their daughter was scared of a lot of stuff, but they thought they could just fix that problem by saying, oh, there's nothing to be afraid of. No, that's not going to hurt you. There's nothing to worry about. Not realizing that when you have this fear inside of you, that those words will do nothing to alleviate that fear, because it is a visceral part of you, of me, when I was a kid. So I grew up, and more, I had a really bad attitude when I was a teenager. I mean, I don't know how they put up with me, to be honest. But I no longer thought of my parents as a resource. And I just started trying to handle everything on my own, because I felt like that was the only thing I could do. Because it just became a way of thinking that going to mom and dad with problems wasn't gonna help anything. Because I kept going to them with the problem of being afraid, and they didn't know how to fix that. And so gradually I just really got in the habit of not asking any grown-ups for help about anything, which is really sad when you think about it. I mean, I was just a kid, and then I was a teenager, and I felt like I had to kind of handle life on my own. So it was really hard. I felt alone. So then I joined this cult when I was 16. It's a cult following of William Branham, and his cult is called the End Time Message. And I will leave a link in the description of this video to the best channel on YouTube, which is called Leaving the Message. So if you want to, you can find out more about this cult. And also there's a link on that YouTube channel that goes to a website that the creator of the channel, John Collins, has made, and it contains so much information about this cult. It's just absolutely amazing. Anyway, I joined this cult. So once you're in a cult, you don't think the other people know what, you don't think they have the knowledge that you need to access from them, even if those people are your own parents. Because all of a sudden, I knew that wearing pants for a woman was wrong, but my mom wore pants. I knew all kinds of things that my parents didn't believe in. So, but I believed it I believed it about 1,000%. And so they did not believe the same things I did. So I knew they were wrong about that too. Of course, now I believe they were right about that all along. But I knew they were wrong about that, because Brother Branham said that you have to do these things, or you have to believe these things. And they didn't do those things, and they didn't believe those things. And so why would I go to them for help with anything? On top of the whole long history of feeling alone, because I was stuck with this fear, and I didn't have any help with it. So I told you in the last video about what happened to me when I was 15. First time I attempted intercourse. It was a horrible experience. It was scary, and I should have taken it a lot more seriously than I did. I was more worried about being late for school that day than what had just happened, which is so messed up, but it shows how young I was and how naive I was and how I didn't understand life. So then when I got married when I was 19 and I had the horrible experience, once again, I did not think of my parents as a resource, or specifically my mom. I don't think I would have called my dad and told him what happened on my wedding night in any circumstances, but I would have called my mom. But by the time I was 19, I was so used to not going to my mom for help. And like, I didn't go to the pastor's wife. I didn't go to anybody. One reason I didn't go to the pastor's wife is because she was the biggest gossip in the church, and I didn't want her to know about it, because then the whole church would know about it, which I think actually happened anyway, unfortunately. But that's a different subject. And I I tried to handle it all on my own, like I have been trying to handle life for so very long, and I messed it up. By continuing to so-called try, to have intercourse, I ended up with vaginismus, which I had for many, many years. So I screwed it up. And I just want to say that if you have a child in your life and that child is always scared, I'm not saying to jump to the conclusion that they've been, R-worded. I definitely hope that is not the case, and it probably isn't. But the fact is, something is going on with that kid. And really, I don't know if I'm qualified to give any advice, but if I did give any advice, it would just be maybe that kid needs therapy. Maybe the family needs therapy to find out what's actually going on. And most of all, if your kid comes to you and they say, "Mommy, Daddy, I'm scared," don't just say, "There's nothing to be afraid of. Go back to bed." Because that will not fix the problem. It will absolutely not fix the problem. And to be honest, I'm not exactly sure what would. Because I don't know how deep down that fear is inside that child. But just telling them there's nothing to be afraid of does not fix anything. And this channel is not only about problems that women have, but hopefully solutions too. And saying there's nothing to be afraid of is no solution at all. So thank you for watching this video, and I appreciate that so much. And have a great day. Bye.